All right, so if you want to become a better wedge player, a lot of that is going to be about how your wedge interacts with the turf. And in this video, we're going to teach you a little bit about club fitting and how all the different grinds and sole designs, which are quite confusing to me and a lot of other golfers, change based on how you deliver the club. So I'm here with my friend Woody Lashen, who's a master club fitter. You've done thousands of fittings, and you can't see him, but you got about 20 wedges in your lap there. So we're going to go through a discussion here and teach people about wedge fitting in general, more so about the head, the sole design, and it's not just about the bounce number that's stamped on it. So where do we start with understanding this topic?
I think to start, understanding that the bounce interacts with the ground.
Yes.
And Ping did a great study. They took their tour players and they had them hit 40-yard shots. They didn't ask them how to hit it. They said, we want you to hit a 40-yard shot. 85% of the time, the wedge entered the ground first before it hit the golf ball. That's a tour player.
Yeah.
They also did the study with higher handicaps, and it was almost the same thing.
Yeah.
So most of the time, the club is going to enter the ground first before it hits the golf ball. So that's why we need the right sole, the right bounce configuration for your game so that you get the right turf interaction for you.
Yeah.
I like to simplify bounce as a rudder. So I've got my wedge coming into the ground, coming down, right? If I have no rudder, if I have zero bounce, the minute that club hits the ground, it wants to dig into the ground, okay? If I've got, because there's no rudder, if I've got too much rudder, it will hit the ground and bounce up and go up. And I won't be able to make good contact that way either way. So I need to have something that's going to allow me to have the club to enter the ground smoothly and not dig or bounce too much so that I can hit the best shots that I'm able to hit.
Okay. It is a very confusing topic, and there's a lot of generalities and myths that get thrown out. So one of the top ones that you've fit so many golfers, you've studied with all of the OEMs and learned from their engineers. What are some of like the biggest myths with sole design and bounce in general?
I think that a high bounce is only for high handicap players.
Yeah.
I think that sole width dictates how much bounce there is. It is a factor. And I think that is something important to understand. What is bounce and how does it really work? So I got to put my glasses on for this because I can't see
do what
without.
you got to do.
But so I'm going to take two wedges here. This one here and this one here. So as best you can see, you look at that wedge there. There appear, if we were to measure this on a scale, this wedge would measure with the most bounce of any wedge I'm going to show you here. Okay, so the measured bounce would be the highest.
And what would that number be? Like, what is it?
Probably 20 degrees.
Okay.
A lot.
Which is a tremendous amount.
A lot. Meanwhile, this is one of the lowest effective bounce wedges there is.
Huh.
Okay? Why? It's a very small sole, and all that bounce is just in that very small part.
Got it.
So this is going to dig into the ground.
Yep.
Okay? Conversely, I have this wedge. It's got a really wide sole. It also has very low effective bounce, but it's got a big wide sole.
Yeah.
So what affects, how does a wedge work? So we've got the actual measured bounce, right? So that would be 0 bounce. That would be maybe 10, that'd be 20. That's a lot of bounce, right? What's the measured bounce? What is the width of the sole? What is the radius of the leading edge?
Yep.
So I make that leading edge sharp. It's going to give it less effective bounce. I make it more rounded. I'm going to have more effective bounce. And the way the manufacturers now do this is they put a number on the back. 10 degrees, 12 degrees, 4 degrees. And that's great. I think the first thing to understand is that, there's no standards in the golf industry. And not saying that's the measured bounce. Because, again, I told you, this says 4 on it, but it's got an incredibly high measured bounce to it. But in this world, it's 4 degrees of effective bounce.
Got it. Because you have to take in consideration all those design factors and how they're exposing it.
I get another manufacturer says 4 degrees of effective bounce, and it's got more or less bounce than this one, because that's how they feel it's going to enter the ground.
Got it.
So you can have here, I actually have 2 wedges that have very close amounts of bounce. These two, one has 12 and one has 14. I don't know if you can see it there, but they're done very different ways.
Yeah.
So one is done with a lot more measured bounce, and the other one is done with a much wider sole. Going to be for two different players.
Yeah.
And that the great thing about sole design is that there's a lot of options.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different ways that you can get the club to go through the ground.
So why would someone, naturally the question is that, okay, why would I want a wedge with more relief and bounce and the wider sole? What type of player does that suit better?
So the first thing is, what are your conditions when you enter the ground? How much do you de-loft the golf club?
Yep.
How steep are you? Those are the two main factors, right? So if I'm de-lofting the club a lot more, I need more bounce. If I'm the angle of attack, the steeper it is, the more bounce I need. Also, what conditions am I playing in? So, for example, I could be really steep and de-lofted a lot, but I'm playing in Scotland where it's really, really firm.
Yep.
I probably can't use nearly as much bounce.
Because you don't want it bouncing off that firm turf and kind of you can blade the ball.
Correct.
Yeah.
Conversely, I could be very shallow and not de-loft a lot and need very low bounce.
Yeah.
And then I go play someplace where it's really soft and wet. I might want to go to a little more bounce because I might get that wedge when it enters the ground first, a little bit on that 40-yard shot to hit a fat shot.
Yeah. So it's a combination of, when you're evaluating a player, you're seeing how they're delivering the club. Are they removing loft with their hands forward like I do? So I'm a handle dragger. I'm removing a ton of loft. And also with that, I'm removing effective bounce. So you need to add some more back in because as I de-loft it, I'm exposing less and less bounce.
Correct.
Therefore, we need more relief. So you're looking at how the player is delivering the club, mostly on partial wedge shots?
Mostly on partial wedge shots.
Yeah.
The other thing also, John, is how do I play the wedge? So if I play my wedge mostly square,
Yeah.
I'm going to need something different than if I open it up
You
sometimes,
like to open it
right?
up.
Some players like me, I learned to hit my sand shots by opening the wedge a ton.
Yeah.
It's not the modern way but it's how I learned.
Yeah.
Well, you better take that into consideration.
So when you do that, what type of grind design would you need?
You're going to need probably a little less bounce because you're adding bounce.
Got it.
So if I open the club face, I'm going to make that, let's see here if I can do it this way. So if I close the club face, that leading edge is going to go more into the ground. If I open the club face, I don't know if you can see it very well there, but you're going to add more bounce.
Yeah.
So that's very important to understand what type of shots are you hitting, right?
Yeah.
If you're playing your club face mostly square, and by the way, there's no right or wrong, then you're going to need a different sole than someone who tends to open it or someone who tends to close it.
Okay. So yeah, combination of how you're delivering it, how you address the club, matched with the types of turf conditions you play. So for example, in the Northeast, we get a little mixture of both. Like we can get wet conditions and we can get really firm conditions. And one of the things that you've always taught me is that you like to give different grinds in each wedge so you have optionality.
Yeah. So I would say, again, every fitting is different because there's plenty of fittings where both wedges are the same exact sole and high bounce, and some they're both really low. But I like to, if I can, let's say our two wedges we're going to use around the green. Let's call it our 60 and our 54, but obviously it could be a 58, 56, whatever it is. I like to have two different soles, so I have two clubs for different conditions.
Yep.
So one with a little more bounce, so when it's softer, when I'm trying to put the club back in my stance and hit it a little lower. One where it's firmer, I'm trying to get the ball up in the air, or I'm adding loft to it. So I can learn to hit two different shots, or I'm allowed to hit two different shots.
Yep.
If I just change the loft, I keep the sole the same, all I'm doing is changing the loft. I'm not changing how that club goes through the ground.
Yep.
And I'm giving that player a lot less options around the greens.
Yep.
And I think that once players understand that, like, oh, wait a minute, I didn't think I wanted a high bounce wedge, but I never opened my 54-degree wedge. And I often hit it fat when I'm trying to hit that shot around the green. Well, maybe we need more bounce there.
Yeah.
Right? I always hit the ball fat. I'm steep. I'm chunking it. Yeah, but wait a minute. The shots on the green, I open the club face a lot, and I'm playing someplace where it's really firm. I better have one with a little less bounce there than I thought. I'll use my 54 or my 56 with more bounce for those other shots.
Got it. So
I often say in a wedge fitting, the most important of a wedge fitting is the conversation before we hit shots.
yeah.
What do you do? What are you trying to do? Where are you playing? Once we know those things, then we can see what you're doing. Now we can get going.
Yeah, so if you have a player, so I'll bring up my friend Joe Mayo, who's been lighting up social media the last year with his wedge technique, and he's kind of gone back to the, for a lot of years, it became very fashionable to put the ball in the middle of your stance, use the bounce, kind of let your hands pass. A long time ago, people used to put it in the back of their stance, and Joe's kind of bringing that back into fashion with, he's advocating very steep, a lot of de-lofting and not using a lot of effective bounce. So if you had someone who came in here and said, yeah, I like to play it off my back foot, and you measure them, they got a 10-degree angle, negative angle of attack, versus someone who plays the ball in the middle of their stance and they're kind of letting their hands pass and bouncing off the turf, it's two totally different wedges.
Two totally different wedges, correct. They're two totally different players.
And technically, you could play both of those shots with two different clubs in your bag. So the wedges you built for me, my sand wedge, wider sole, tons of relief built into it, and my lob wedge, not so much. So I will kind of change which club I use based on the shot I'm hitting.
But that also changed over the years for you.
Yes.
So in my own personal game, 10 years ago, I used a 6-degree wedge with a lot of bounce. I needed a lot of bounce. If I got in a real firm bunker, it was tough, but overall it was great.
Yeah.
As I've gotten older, my swing has changed. My technique's changed a little bit. I'm using a lot less bounce in that 6-degree wedge because of my technique has changed. So it can change over years.
Yeah.
How are you trying to hit the shots? Maybe you've realized, I'm not good at this shot, so I'm trying to figure out how to hit that shot, and that has other effects on other shots.
So another question I have for you, just because I know it's confusing to me, and that means it's probably confusing to a ton of people watching this. So you have manufacturers with like a K grind and all these different like letters and grinds, and I don't quite understand what they are. Can you simplify that for us a little bit?
That's them labeling what they want that design to be called.
Yeah.
It's marketing.
Okay.
Okay, and they have to label it something.
Yes.
Sole 1, Sole 2, Sole 3. A lot of those from some companies came from, they designed a wedge for Tom Kite back in the day.
Yeah.
And so when they would, maybe it's a K grind.
Yeah.
Right? I used to know what a lot of those grinds meant from different companies, but it's just names that came up with.
And they're just changes in like the width of the sole, that leading edge radius, like the effective bounce they're building into it.
Those little changes can make a very big difference, John.
Okay.
So
well, that's why it's confusing, because sometimes people just, they show up to the store and they look at all. So if someone was on their own, which let's say someone does not have access to a great fitter like you, or geographically it's just hard for them, or it's not within their budget. Not everyone can get a budget to get fit. What do you tell the players on their own? Can they just, if they have access to demo clubs and a few different grinds, like go out there and test out? What are they looking for?
Yeah. So if you can't get to a fitter, you really need to then be outside. Get 2 or 3 different grinds in the same loft, and then go off the grass, the conditions you normally play in, and try to hit different shots with them and see how they go through the ground.
Yeah.
One of the great tests that I like to do if you're outside is, okay, here's a 40-yard shot with nothing in front. I want you to hit 3 shots with wedge A, 3 shots with wedge B, and 3 shots with wedge C. Don't change anything. And then we judge where the shots went.
Yeah.
Then the next shot, we put that same 40-yard shot, but there's a bunker in front.
Yeah.
So the guy to hit it higher. Same thing. And then you can kind of score it up. Volky did this great test that way, where you actually go it off of all different conditions with 3 or 4 different soles.
Yeah.
And then you could rate it at the end. Hey, wait a minute. I didn't think that was the best wedge for me, but I got it much closer with that high bounce wedge off all conditions than I did with the low bounce wedge I really thought I wanted.
I think that is an interesting, and I've done that myself, and I've seen like certain wedges, I'm like, I'm just stabbing this one into the ground more. Like I just can't hit it. Like it's not working with how I deliver the club head, and people most of the time can hopefully see that more often, and that is definitely a good test to do on your own. What do you think about, I don't know if it's gimmicky is the right word, but there's been some large manufacturers who have done it. There used to be the infomercial wedges, like massive, like hunk of metal on the bottom of it, like crazy relief built into it. And I think Ping and Callaway have built these like super high bounce wedges. What do you think about that for the player who's like really struggling?
I think it's great.
Yeah.
So
why is it great?
Well, so we have a player here that had the yips with the wedge. He simply chunked or sculled every wedge. And so he got one of those wedges where he could just hit down on it and it wouldn't dig into the ground.
Yeah.
And we call it the magic wedge.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden he went from not being able to get the ball on the green with the wedge to maybe, having a chance to get it close and maybe get up and down. He doesn't use that anymore, but it helped him get out of that.
It was like a training wheel. Yeah. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
There's some players that maybe need to use that wedge for their entire careers.
Yeah.
It's a great tool. Listen, golf is a game that could be carved up a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
The more options you have, that big wide sole with tons of effective bounce has a great spot for, again, small amount of players, but there's a need for it.
Yeah. Now, would you say that better wedge play, if you talk to a lot of different, like of the best wedge instructors out there and they're observing the best wedge players on tour, what are they mostly doing? They're mostly de-lofting and interacting with the turf a lot. So a lot of those players are not using bounce at all, and they probably need some more. Is that kind of a general rule of thumb? Is like, as you see better people who are better controlling turf interaction and trajectory, which are two hallmarks of great wedge play, they actually are removing a ton of bounce most of the time on those tighter shots, maybe.
Yes, but that doesn't mean that they're using the same wedges.
Yes.
And so it doesn't mean that a better players in general use less bounce and a weaker player in general use more bounce.
Because there's some people who come to you and be like, give me no bounce at all because I'm good.
Yeah, right, exactly. and they don't realize that has nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
They're on tour. There's high bounce guys and there's low bounce guys, and there's all different. One of the examples I'll give you, when we were out one year at Titleist doing a test with Vokey, one of the guys is a really good wedge player. He's like, yeah, but I need a little more bounce for the sand. They go, well, try this out of the sand and he actually was better with the lower bounce wedge. He could swing it faster and create more spin with the lower. And he's like, well, he figured it out. Wow. And he changed his approach.
Yeah.
Sometimes you need to always go back and revisit. What are you doing and how are you trying to do it? It doesn't matter your ability. Again, if the tour player, if the club is entering the ground 80% or 85% of the time on a 40-yard shot, how that sole interacts the ground for you is critical.
Could be the difference between a skull chunk or a decent shot.
Yes.
Yeah.
Big time.
And that's mostly what we're talking about here is proper turf interaction.
Correct.
And that could be with the rough, tight line, the fairway, and I would throw sand in there. So technically it's not turf, but it's a lot of the shots you're going to be hitting out of there, as much as we don't want to hit those shots out of there.
And you want to have the best 2 or even 3 tools. Sometimes we've got players using a gap wedge with a lot of bounce because they want to have something they can use around the greens where they can use a lot of bounce, but de-loft it and hit that lower shot. You want to have the best tools for your game to help you get the ball up and down as often as you can, or get the ball on the green maybe as often as you can, depending upon your handicap. And the great thing is, between all the companies today, there's a lot of options,
which is a good thing. I call that a great book I read a long time ago, The Paradox of Choice.
Yes.
It's a good thing for you because as the experienced fitter, you know how to deliver these tools to the player, but for most players who are on their own, they're on the Ping website, they're on the Callaway website, and it can get confusing. And I'm not saying that they're doing anything bad. They're making a lot of great clubs. Like all these manufacturers are making wonderful wedges, but again, this can be confusing to the typical golfer. So I'd say like the big 3 things I've learned from you is that, accommodate the grind and sole design to your technique and the turf you're going to play on, and give yourself some variety in the bag. So you might be a high bounce, high relief player, but you don't need that necessarily. Like that'll be the profile on both of your wedges, but one will have a little less than the other.
Correct.
So you've got some variety.
Yep.
And if you can, get the same lofted club and try out a bunch of different grinds and see which one interacts with the turf the best, because you probably will see that quite quickly.
Yep.
anything else we
I
missed?
think you
Or you think we
covered
got
it.
it all? We're doing like speed videos here, getting everyone as much information in as little time as possible.
Yeah, I mean, we may miss something, but I think you got the gist of what we're trying to tell you.
Okay. So hopefully you understand how wedge design and sole design works at this point. I know it can be confusing. We're doing a ton of these videos on the channel. We're calling it the Equipment Education Series with Pete's Golf. So make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss a new one, and I will link to their website in the description.